Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. In this podcast, we'll dive into the strategies that top leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs are using to navigate and thrive. All right, everyone. Well, hey, welcome to another edition of the Exponential Growth Podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, somebody I've known about 10 years or so. We worked together at Accenture, amazing technology strategy consulting company doing transformational change for a lot of organizations, and got to know each other as we worked in the Chicago office. We were both managing directors there in leadership roles. And an amazing career in leadership, amazing career in strategy, management consulting, and is now doing some really cool stuff that I'm not going to spoil it right now. But welcome to the podcast, Tracey Seward.
David, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
All right. Well, great. Well, hey, so a lot of amazing things. It's amazing. You open up the paper, you look on the web, and there's all kinds of stuff that are just continuing daily to, come out there that's new, that has exponential growth. Before we jump in there, I always like to let our audience know you have an amazing background, amazing story. Would love you to tell that story about Tracey to our audience out there.
I think what's fun is you may not even know some of this that I'm going to share with you as well too. And as I thought about the narrative, it's also something that I haven't talked about publicly, David, when I introduced myself to people. And I come and you and I know you.
This is like breaking news then?
It is. It's actually, the more that I think about it, in this next chapter of where I'm at and my professional work, and we'll talk about that as well too, is it's core, which is why I need to mention it. But I also grew up in small town Indiana. I know you also live in Indiana. I live in just the city of Chicago now, and I've been here back here probably about 18 years. I do consider myself a city girl. But where I grew up and how I grew up, I really feel like is the core of who I am. I don't think I appreciated that as much as I do today through the 20 plus years that I worked at Accenture, to be honest. And I think, the family upbringing for me, very humble, I would say modest as well as too, but 6 generations today of a family business. So that's
right. I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe I did mention this as I think about like some of the things, the work you're doing on the board as well too. But 1892, this company was created, and I obviously was not around then, but I've seen the pictures of how it started, right, in the back of wagons and selling goods in the back of wagons. But year over year, the transformation that this business has gone through and has done to today, right? It's gone from selling in the back of a wagon to a general store, a hardware store where I spent tons of time sorting nails and all kinds of things like that, restaurants to, a big general mechanical contracting company today. And so cool though, because when I take a step back and I think about and do this reflection with myself, I saw constant transformation every single year of my life. Now, granted, I was in the trenches, except for maybe not in the field with the electricians or whatever, but I visited all those job sites and I saw a lot of that. But to evolve and to survive, it was transformational. It had to be. And so I don't think I thought about how much, I geek out about, consulting and being a consultant, solving problems, transformation that you and I both have led at Accenture as well too. But I saw it from probably the first 3 years of my life when I could remember what was actually going on. So that's like the humble upbringing, and to watch now, my family's still heavily engaged, and and I advise as well on the outside, but I'll just never forget my grandpa talking about the fact that, right, we don't have all the answers, but we're going to continue to change and transform, and we're going to go. And, if it weren't for the people, the doors wouldn't open. And that's something I know that you and I really definitely share from an Accenture perspective as well. So that's just a bit of the background that continues to just take me in this, like, I can't stop thinking about change and transformation and what's next for business. So yeah.
So you did, and so 20 years at Accenture, you said?
A little over 20 years, by the way.
Yeah.
Two
Okay.
times, two times. So in
Two times.
theory,
Yeah, me too. Me too. I had
really,
two stints as well. Yeah.
yeah. So in theory, like the length of it is three decades, actually 30 years. So I also left the beginning of the early career. So you and I both, I don't know, not to date either one of us, but 30 years almost. But I did leave after a couple of years, created a small consulting firm, but that whole 5 years I was away was working with Anderson Consulting. So and then I came back and
Got
spent
it.
a lot of time also in an entrepreneurial phase, I would say, at Accenture, but always in a looking at transformation and always working on the what was next, not only for Accenture but for our clients.
Always, right? It's always that's the one thing I admire about Accenture, just always trying to look 10 years, 15 years out, and then how do you best position your clients to change and be successful and several technology changes that have went out there for obviously more on the big corporation side, but it has more a lot of impact to everyday everyday people out there, regardless of how you live, work, and play. So it's been amazing to watch. Anything you want to share about what you got going on recently? Like what are you kind of doing recently?
It's funny because I actually was going to even say it before, but I think it's thinking about the transformation of where I'm at right now. And again, I think I always joke about this with my friends, even at Super Bowl party last night. It's like you can't ever take the consultant out of a consultant, but it can be a little bit different on the other side of Accenture. And so for me, it still stays the through line is with leaders and leadership. And my entire career would have been at the intersection of technology and people, David. I was always in our, and attached to what we called our talent and organization practice. So always in that human capital, but a technologist at heart. And so humanizing technology always throughout my career, but wow, is it important now? Wow, is it important now? And so that's where I spend a lot of my time right now is with leaders in the world of their AI adoption strategies, right? And it's not when, it's now, right? And we're all in it and adopting it, but how do we truly bring it into the fold of our teams and our workflows and at Accenture I spent a lot of time in that. What is the future of work? We're in it.
Oh, totally.
We're in
No,
it
totally,
right
totally.
now. So I would say the leadership advisory and still in that intersection of human and technology is where I'm at right now.
Well, it's an amazing space. It's there's so much things going on there, right? That I don't even know what the heck it's called anymore. I think it changed its name three times in the last 3 weeks. Cloudbot and Lobsterbot and all this kind of stuff, right? Mold. I don't even know what I can't remember what the latest name is. I can't keep up. But you have AI agents and you have org charts you have org charts that now have humans and agents and all this kind of and agents interacting with agents autonomously, to do work and execute work. So that's kind of like one trend that I'm seeing in kind of that intersection of space that you have. But would love your thoughts. And again, this is like the podcast. Like you have a unique lens. And by the way, too, I'm very involved with a company that has 8 generations, right? And they pivoted and they've had to
That's
move
we
their
did have that
trans.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and very call it traditional businesses, printing and media, and look, now it's a little bit more technical, but that whole transformation, and it's all people. I mean, it is people and change, right? You can't, and to be successful, you got to kind of navigate that. So the trends, right? I chatted on this like
Yeah.
AI and agents, but what trends are you seeing that you can kind of get our listeners are college students to CEOs to board members, so it's a very diverse group of listeners there.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Before I even jump in, and it may even take me to a couple of the thoughts on trends here as well too. Trends I love. I mean, our Accenture always had a great set of trends as well too. But I go to
Yeah.
World Economic Forum virtually every single year, and there's always something interesting in there as well too. Before I lose that thought, though, it was last year when Mark Benioff from Salesforce ultimately said, "This is last year. This is the last generation of the C-suite that will be managing a human-only workforce." So that stuck. That really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that's something, and you already said it, right? We're already starting to design, work flows and roles and responsibilities and org charts with an AI agent or our AI teammate. Some people don't like to say that word necessarily, but in that flow already. And I think though, from a trend perspective, right, AI is here, and it is really here. And I think, frankly, it's been here for decades, but it is here in a very different way, where it is pervasive in our flow of work, which also is, I think, super exciting. I think also interesting as well too. I think AI trend for me, number one, AI as a decision amplifier. AI as a
Okay.
decision amplifier. I think, again, pervasive in the flow of work. We're all using it. Everyone out there is using it probably in some capacity, even if it's to say, which movie should I go see tonight? I've got, all of these ingredients in my refrigerator. What's dinner going to look like tonight? Cook me up a recipe, right? So we're using it, and we're using it for decision making. So I think it's exciting. It's pervasive. It's with us right now, but it's also, I believe, incredibly risky, incredibly risky. And so I'm always the girl, glasses half full. So maybe I'll start there, because I think the human judgment part of this is what we can and will not lose. It does not have the human judgment. And so, but again, when human judgment in creating these decisions is on and spot on, great, awesome. If judgment is non-existent in this decision making, if the human isn't in this decision making, that is not a positive thing. Therein, in my opinion, comes the creating the conditions, right? And so, as an amplifier, right, the leaders here today, that are listening to this, I'm certain you're already thinking about the conditions that we need to create and make, as we know that this is out there, even if it's setting up, your responsible use case right now, that you know that your teammates are all using AI in some capacity, but is there a use case in place, right? So the amplifier, in my opinion, it's here, it's exciting, but there's also the things that we as leaders, I think, need to do, David, and be ready for.
Yeah.
That I hear a lot of leaders saying, my goodness, I know I need to do something with that. I haven't gotten that far yet, right? But
Totally.
but I need to. I would say number two, and then I'll pause, because these are the two that I talk about a lot as well too. And this one takes a bit of a throwback, possibly, to the world of 2020, when we were all foundationally almost at the same ground point, that you can imagine. That is collapse of distance. And those are my words. Those are, I mean, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but the distance now, I mean, you and I, not, we're having a podcast and we're talking, and we don't need to be in the same room. I haven't seen you. I don't know when the last time I've seen you was, but
That is a great point. It's probably 6, 7 years. I don't, ish, right? Yeah. Wow, you're right.
so the distance, right? And I'm not at all, talking about, don't go back to the office, don't be in person. I, of all people, need to be in person, in some capacity, and that's important to me as well. But it's here. And with AI already pervasively in workflow and the way that we work, and that, extra tool technology teammate is already also part of our flow. And so, just this collapse of distance, I think it just got, it got exponentially expedited in the 2020 window, right? But it also taught us a whole bunch of things about, right, how we can work, how we will work, what it looks like. And so for me, underneath that one, the importance is culture and trust from a leadership standpoint as well too. How do we continue, right, with each generation out there to connect, to teach, to learn, to network, to grow? those are things that we're going to have to be even more deliberate, where, I know that you and I used to, lead happy hours in Chicago on a Friday or whatever, a Thursday, and we'd invite all of, the entire practice in and do you have to do that anymore? Not necessarily. Do we still need that in some capacity? Perhaps, but this collapse of distance, it's here forever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the way, and it's also like it collapsed and it rapidly and globally, right? So that, and it's and then there's also like processes and systems that are still trying like catch up and say, well, why
yeah,
do we need to do that like call it the more logistical, bureaucratic things. You're seeing it still takes a while for processes to catch up, but they're getting pushed to we'll call it more remote or getting automated and stuff like that. But I think the deep connection what we're seeing,
yeah,
at Angeles where I run is experiences like experience like happy hours. You can argue it's an experience, but you go to the office and all like that. But it's like what I think is becoming more human are just experiences. It could be a beautiful concert. It could be a boat ride. It could be, paint, sipping wine and painting and stuff like that, right? Like those things, I think you're seeing, maybe more, but you're seeing connections happen that way as well.
yeah. I love just to put a little thing in there. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but the word experience is it probably is in one of my top adventure and experience, probably in the top values for me as well too. But I've also I've been leading a number of outdoor experiences as well, David,
Oh,
as part of this,
cool.
this leadership advisory that I'm doing. And
Anything cool? I
yeah,
mean, I've
well,
seen some,
there's
heard
a
some really
there's a
cool, any
lot.
cool ones you want to share? Because maybe we can, maybe we'll spin one off coming out of this call.
Not at all meant to be a commercial. It really isn't. So, for me, for the last, a good 10 years, back to your point of experience, I love to climb mountains. And so, I've been taking groups of people up these mountains. So Kilimanjaro a few times and I'm going to do the walk across Spain, the Camino de Santiago here this year as well too. But
Yeah, I had a good
taking,
friend who just did that last year. Good friend
yeah,
that just did that last year. Yeah.
but putting leaders in the room, and again, the way that I talk about that, and it doesn't need to be an experience. It doesn't need you leaving your house or whatever, right? Or it doesn't necessarily, but it is about changing the conditions, and that's what I talk about, right, as well too, is just changing the conditions that we're under. Because wow, you've already said it, the pace of change. I remember days when we used to say, when years back, that the pace of change is never, as slow as it is today. I
Correct.
don't even think we can
That's a great
exponentially
statement. It
measure
will only
that.
get faster. Yeah, totally. Which
Correct.
is which is scary because it's happening so fast. I always say like, look at the iPhone, whatever, 15 years ago, whenever it first came out, and just look at all it does right now. Just
Correct.
but that was whatever, 10, 15 years. But that pace of change just for that that's only going to get faster and shorter. And by the way, that's kind of the call it the thesis behind the Exponential Growth Podcast and newsletter that I have is like
It
the stuff
is.
is happening I mean in multiple dimensions of exponential growth, right? So well good. So that's a little bit so those are some of the trends you see that you've laid out there. Now, what investing, right? So you have an interesting take on investing. One, I assume you invest yourself. Two, though, you have a family business that over almost 100 years has had to make investments, pivot, change. And so and then how do you see them looking at from a business perspective how they invest in this environment? And then just maybe to our audience out there, how should they think about investing with all this change that's out there?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a great question. And again, I'm not necessarily a portfolio manager, but of course I invest. And we've been taught to invest since we were very, very young kids, and hopefully everyone out there is doing the exact same thing as well too. But I think what I can bring as well too, so not only the family business and how I've watched over the years the investment, the reinvestment, the shift, the change, the liquidation, and where they've taken it to ultimately come to where they are today and where they're going. But I can also equate that to what I think, back to the consulting days, the level of investment, I would say almost it's execution advantage. I think that's the word I want to say, execution advantage. And the level of greatness that I have seen post investment, even from a consulting standpoint, as well as the level of honestly failure in investment based upon execution advantage. I think those are the words that come to mind. And what I mean by that as well is, right, our leaders aligned. Is the vision and strategy in place? Are leaders aligned to the vision and strategy? And are leaders and operators and partners and suppliers, and is there alignment? And I might even throw in like the world of AI that I see right now as well is, and this has been going on for 3 to 5 years as well too, is, let me just insert an example. Board says I need to go start to put my AI plans in place. I'm going to go put my AI plans in place, but without, a very, very intentional strategy and alignment about how we're investing time and money in that exact program, right? Is it for naught? In some cases, I've seen
Yeah.
many times it actually has fallen apart, and the investment, that individuals have put in it have actually gone way darker than was planned. And so there's this, again, back to execution, maybe even excellence, right? The way
Yeah.
that I would look at it as well too, but also being ready to pivot and being ready to shift. But I would be looking at companies that's kind of my thought process here is companies that have just a very strong vision, strategy, alignment at the top. How are leadership decisions made? How are decisions that aren't going well made and handled, right? What does alignment look like? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I've seen them win and I've seen them fall apart.
Yeah.
Now that
Totally.
alignment in place. So
Yeah, it's because we're in a world of a lot of change, and you talked a little bit about pivoting, right? And you know how to pivot, when to pivot. I mean, it's those are not easy decisions, right? And I think to your point, they should have, you have the right strategy and plan and all that other. It's got to be then aligned with values, and then you call it your execution. Then you can make investments and bets, and you know there's scenarios where you get asked for an investment, and it's always like, yeah, wait, here's the plan. It's going to go up and to the right. We're going to do this. And I'm like, well, maybe, but what
maybe
about the scenario where things go south?
correct.
And then how do you know when things are going? And what are the when things don't go as you plan? And really thinking through that stuff. It's really, and it's not easy, by the way. It's really hard. I mean, think Netflix and Blockbuster, right?
One of the
Like,
best examples.
oh my God, it's an amazing story
Right.
because it was like disruptive technology. But by the time they kind of knew what was happening, it was the machine was just kind of too late, and they went bankrupt. Right. That's like one example that I see. But the thing is, like, it goes to your earlier point about like the accelerating change of technology. Like, look, at least Blockbuster had 5 years, 6 years, 7 years to kind of see what was going, and kind of now it's happening a lot faster, right? So it's really it's not this isn't easy. So you're in this space. Then this kind of goes like the leadership thing, right? So
It,
you
it's
talked
it's
about
it's
trust, you talked about culture. How do you lead, and how do the leaders make decisions in this environment?
I think there's a couple of things that come to mind, and the word that keeps coming to mind as you're talking. Even Netflix is such a great case that we've been using for as long been Blockbuster as long as it went down, right? I mean, it's been talking about it. But the word that's coming to mind here too, and I would say one of the core strengths, skills, capabilities, whatever we want to talk about. I mean, the word it's agility. It's agility.
Agility.
It is agility, and that is easier said than done. There's a whole lot of things. If I break
Totally.
it down,
Totally.
oh my gosh, ego gets in the way, right? I was destined in design. I'm mentoring, a couple of individuals right now, and I can see some of this. Oh, but I don't want to give it up yet. But I don't want to stop. But I don't want to pivot. But I want to try a little longer. To what cost and to what end, right? And so it can feel that resistance. And when you start digging in underneath of that, there is a lot of things in play. There may even be some ego in play. There may be, a level of, investors or board basically, maybe it's perceived, maybe it's real, maybe it's not, ultimately saying, listen, you gotta succeed, you gotta fail with this one, but sometimes you gotta let go. And you
Totally.
do have to move on. So it is agility. And that is a skill that is way easier sometimes said than done, or I would say performed, right?
Totally.
A whole lot of things
Oh,
going on behind it that are actually very human and emotional as well too. So that's key. That is key for
yeah.
me.
And you look at, like a lot of the amazing tech companies, they do a really good job at it, right? Whether it's Apple and looking at how they agile to different product lines, different versions of products, store, all that, and then even the watches and you look even Microsoft, right? Word Office, server software, cloud, gaming, all this day. They think they got into TV too for a little bit there with was it MSNBC or whatever. But so trying a lot of different things, and then you look at Amazon too, another one, right? It's agile, Whole Foods, you know, doing
Healthcare,
all kinds of
pharmacy,
satellite
and all
deliver,
that.
so that's drone delivery, all kinds of stuff, right? And making mistakes, right? I mean, what was it? The one that was it the not the Kindle? I think the Kindle did all right, but I think the jury's still out on Alexa. I think we'll see. But the point is, it's like trying things, being agile, seeing if decision criteria. Hey, do we kill this? Do we let it continue? What before we get in it? How are we going to get out of it?
Right.
Those kind of things.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what that makes me think of as well too is something else that we talk about a lot with leaders too is leaders. So taking agility maybe even a step further, because it's like how do you do that? But you're
Yeah,
you're touching
great
on
word,
it a little
great
bit,
word. How do you do it?
right? You're touching on it a little bit, I think, as well too. So it's call it, I don't know, modern leadership. I don't know if I like that or not either, but a leadership trait as well right now, in my opinion, or trend or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, but it is moving from decision maker to designing the decision conditions. And so
Oh,
if
I like
you're
that. I like that.
designing the conditions, and I think it's a great segue to the point you just raised, right? Because again, you're now starting to, you said a few of the points, right? That you're starting to identify how far are we going to go? How long are we going to go? To what investment number? What do the metrics look like? What do the numbers look like? Let go. Or let's go big, right? Or,
Yeah. Let's
so
triple down. Let's look. I mean,
exactly
look at the hyperscalers, how much they're investing right now, building out, all these data centers and all that kind of stuff, right? For
right.
whatever reason, they made a decision. We're going big, big.
Right. So designing the decision conditions, I think, is also really important to do as well, too.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Tracy, so you have a lot of things going on, Tracy. Any, as we look to think about exponential growth and whether it's things that you see, ways to invest, leadership, any kind of last thoughts you want to leave with our listeners out there, and then also how do they get in touch with you and keep up with all the great work you're doing?
Yeah, of course. I think I'll end with a couple things. And it's funny, I think I'll go back to even where I started with the blue collar business in a second here too. But I think it's an incredible time for leaders. And I think it is. I think it's scary. I think the decision making is happening faster than, obviously the human mind and body can keep up with it. And what will that look like? And again, I go back to maybe, designing the conditions. There's a number of things that we talk about as well. But it's there that we're in an era where leaders now truly, 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 I'm going to use something that you and I might know well too, truly need to be human. They need to be human. We can't hide behind years of experience. We can't hide behind frameworks. We can't, right? We need to be human. We need to trust our teams. We need to trust our leaders. So there's an era now that's just almost fundamental, David, that I think gets me really excited about, the opportunity that we have as leaders. But I think what also, like, just completely, a little bit different than that is watching as well. If you're watching, in NVIDIA, CEO is talking about this. Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs is talking about this. But the uprise of the blue collar, the trade skilled, the need for those jobs are
Totally.
incredibly, incredibly important going forward. And I mean, that's again back to building infrastructure that you talked about as well too. So to me, there's a personal, of course, excitement about that. But I think it not only is about, these trade workers and more of these trade workers that are going to have incredible opportunity, but there's going to be a modern trade worker aspect of this as well too. So I get to watch like the generation of these trade workers who are saying, listen, I'm growing up in an AI world, and I need to understand how I'm going to be using AI in the field to do what I do, or and I could talk about that at length as well too. So that's an exciting time, I think, for another whole era of trade and jobs. So there's a lot more that I get excited about. I get excited about, and I love to have conversations like this. So I'm grateful for the opportunity, and anyone can get in touch with me. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn and quite active on LinkedIn, and also TraceySeward.com. It's really simple.
Tracy also, yeah, follow that. Tracey Seward on LinkedIn, a lot of great stuff. And Tracy, look, it's an honor to get you on the podcast, hear your perspectives. And look, we'll have you back on because the stuff is happening fast. And that is probably a call it human technology is like just a vital component. So you're very busy. It's an honor to have you on the podcast. Thanks for jumping on. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, David.